So first and foremost, thank you very much for this wonderful invitation. I feel truly humbled to be asked to speak to you all. As an actor turned writer turned director, I can cover a lot of bases. And the bug for me for acting was that I was always the class clown. I was always keen to get people's attention. I was never very good at sports. I was terrible at rugby. And the only way that I got girls' attention at school was through acting. And that led me to, funny enough, at the same time, I had a massive interest in Jackass. So alongside my passion for acting about 14, 15, I started doing home videos with my skateboarding buddies. I had a video camera bought for Christmas, and I started editing these videos. And I started doing these things and these compilations that were awful, absolutely awful. But I'd print them out on CD and take them to the yard, and I'd sold them on the yard to people. I'd sold these little 30-minute videos of me and my friends messing about trying to imitate Jackass. So there was already at a very early age, at 15, 16, my desire to create and to be on camera was sort of intertwining already from a very early age. But what I did find fascinating at that time was that I really wanted to be an editor. I didn't want to be in front of camera. I found the whole process of storytelling something that had already been made and trying to get that into a sort of narrative form. I found that process of sat in front of the computer fascinating. So I did 2 lots of work experience, and one was for a post-production company called Pyramid. But I did a week's work experience in Pyramid post-production. And I was so disappointed because I didn't get to touch any of the buttons. I was basically a glorified T-boy. I desperately wanted to edit something. I saw this huge, massive desk, and I wasn't allowed to do anything. So I was very angry and very sad that my goal of an editor, I thought this editing life would be so glamorous. And it was just a guy or a woman on a chair in a dark room, not really talking to anyone for days on end. So my dream of editing was sort of quite quickly killed. And at the same time, it was about 17, 18, my drama teacher in high school in Canharry, Miss Glory Cunnan, saw me sort of wish-washing through my late teens and not really focusing on anything. And she sat me down on a computer and she said, I will fill out your UCAS form. You are going to apply for drama schools. And I'm so grateful that she did, because I would not be here talking to you guys today or have the career that I've had. And through drama school, through getting into Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, was where the passion for art, for the craft of acting and writing and creating was really nourished and focused. There's a thing in the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama that they do at the end of every year called an EYA, which is an end of year assessment. It was to create a 20-minute piece of theatre where you had to star in it, you had to write it, you had to direct it, and you had to tech it. So that was the end goal at the end of every year, was that you needed to be the focal point. You needed to write for yourself, you needed to direct yourself. And it was during this time where I started to understand and appreciate the process of trying to create something from scratch. And through doing this and doing pretty well at these projects and with collaborating with people in my year, and on the day that I graduated drama school, I ended up getting an agent, I ended up doing the showcase and all this sort of thing, and was very lucky with all of that. But on the day that I graduated drama school, I was deeply hungover. I went and sat down Cardiff Bay with a really good friend of mine called Tom Cullen, who is a very famous actor, very famous Welsh actor now as well. He's been in Downton Abbey and loads of other things. Me and Tom sat down the day after graduation from drama school, and we created a theatre company together. It was to make sure that we didn't rest on our laurels or allowed for our personal agents, to dictate our careers. And it was the biggest thing that I'd ever done in terms of taking control of my own creative life. I set up this theatre company called In Depth Theatre with Tom. because at the time we felt that there was very little new writing theatre in Wales. There was a massive gap in a market to facilitate new writing, specifically people that we knew were doing brilliant plays that never got put on at the Sherman. There was no equivalent of the Bush or the Royal Court at that time in Cardiff or in Wales particularly. And myself and Tom Cullen realised that there was a niche, a little gap in the market for new writing. We set up a theatre company with a goal that within 5 years, we would win a fringe first at Edinburgh. That was our dream. We self-funded it. I actually ended up spending most of the money that I earned on doing a TV show called The Indian Doctor. I actually spent most of my earnings of that facilitating a play. So I was always moving money from acting into creating work. I never really wanted to just sit back and enjoy the fact that I was earning a nice amount of money for doing a TV show, for doing a role. Everything that I earned during those first 3 years of acting went straight into me creating this theatre company with my best friend, Tom Cullen. And the biggest thing that this theatre company had for me was that I'd go into auditions and they'd say, so what are you up to at the moment? And I'd say, listen, I'm kind of not really here for you. I've got to go back to Cardiff right now and I've got to tech this play. And I've got to figure out how to get free lights and I've got to print off tickets. And suddenly through that, I guess, no-nonsense approach that my mind was elsewhere, it was displaced. And the fact that I was being creative separate to my acting meant that I became desirable, bizarrely. The more you say, no, I don't want you, the more people think, oh God, he's really interesting, or she's really interesting. I was very lucky and very focused on my acting side, but it was always sort of, best metaphor I can use is having 2 train tracks. There were always 2 train tracks going in my life. And this is one of the biggest things that I hope to inspire you guys and give you advice on, is that you should never just have one feather in your cap. You should have many strings to your bow and have them as much as possible and try and learn new experiences. But for me, I never wanted just to be Alexander Vlahos, the actor. I wanted to be more interesting than that. So I wanted to be an artistic director of a theatre company. I wanted to write my own plays. I wanted to direct my friends' plays. And through doing all of these different many fingers in many pies, it allowed me to appreciate a whole cacophony of other aspects of the creative industry. I'd be on set in a TV show asking all the questions. I would be asking the DOP, why are you using that lens? I'd be asking the light, the spark, the grip. Why is that light there? What does that light do to my face when you're doing this? Like, what does the guy with the clapperboard do? Why is the floor runner why is he the only one that's got a headset? Like, I'd be asking what seemed like mundane questions, but they were filling my brain up with as much knowledge as I possibly could have taken at that time. Just because I wanted to sort of soak everything up like a sponge. There are bad sides to this, and I'll give you an example. That while I was doing a professional play, I was in Hamlet at the Sheffield Crucible with John Sim. He was playing 3 small parts. And at the time, I was still running my theatre company. And I took my play that I'd written to the director of this play, of Hamlet. And it really confused him. It confused him that I was an actor, but I was asking his advice on something that I'd written. And it really took a sort of, it felt like I did something wrong. But actually, I know that I was doing something very, very, very right, which was that keeping as many plates spinning as possible, never resting on just being one thing and being good at one thing. I wanted to be good, or at least try to be good at everything that I possibly could. So I've had, since it's now been 11 years since I graduated from the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. And I've had the most wonderful of careers based on small theatre scales, massive West End jobs. I've worked on Broadway with Kenneth Branagh. I've been directed by him. I've worked in small scale television shows, full feature films, And the biggest of TV shows, the biggest primetime shows, I've worked on Merlin. And I guess the biggest one for me was Versailles, which was a period drama in the 1700s in France, filming in Paris for 4 years of my life for 3 seasons, playing the lead part. During this time on set, I started to grow incredibly frustrated at the lack of control that an actor has, especially on screen. And I was finding being on set really creative and fulfilling up until a point. There was always a sort of glass ceiling. And I had a sort of moment of, I guess not an epiphany, but like a moment of, I just basically looked around the room and saw the one person that seemed to be in control, which was the director. And it was during that time that I was like, oh, okay. So he or she is enjoying being in the middle of the spider web diagram. You've got makeup and hair. You've got the line producer. You've got the DOP. You've got the first AD. You've got the actors are all coming through this person. And this person is having to be basically an on-set politician. Delegate, be democratic, make very hard decisions, make very loose decisions, try and keep the atmosphere of the set up and joyful. So it was during these 3 years of working on this TV show that I came to the conclusion that I wanted to take what that person was doing and try it for myself. And during this time, it was my last season on Versailles, which was 2017. A friend of mine in drama school who was 2 years below me sent me a script. He knew that I'd done my theatre company. He trusted my, I guess, artistic opinion. And he said, do you think you can help me with some notes for this script? So I spent a good 6-7 months being an outside perspective for him, trimming, cutting, giving my opinion as an actor would on something like this, as a creative friend. And little did I know that his plan all along was to get me to be the director for this. So when that was sort of jumped upon me, I realized that I really wanted to give directing a go. I thought my experience as an actor, having worked on screen for 10 years, and my knowledge, the knowledge that I sunk through my head would be beneficial. I turned to a kickstarting campaign, a crowdfunding website, to try and get this film made. And through a long period of time, ended up raising 17 grand, which was big for a Kickstarter at that time. And I called upon, a lot of friends in the industry to help me spread it on social media and Twitter and all of those things. And then it came to doing the shoot and having to build up the networking of all the people that I'd met and different DOPs, and trying to get this made and picking a date and casting for it, and all these sort of elements that takes much longer than you anticipate. I couldn't have just gone and shot it the next week. It was an incredibly arduous process getting this film made. But yeah, I ended up having the best 3 days of my life directing this film, and being on set and being that person that I aspired to be, which was this director that I'd known for years, which was being able to delegate, being able to thrive on all of these questions coming my way, compared to being an actor and only having one channel to go through, which is your director. Being the director and having all of these come through, it just fitted with my personality. Through doing Lola and developing as a director, there were so many ups and downs, from sourcing a producer and all the risk involved, trying to get the money for it. But the minute that film was complete, we entered it into loads of film festivals. It got selected for 3. So immediately from the get-go, the film festivals that Lola got entered into set me on a trajectory to start being counted as a director. Suddenly that you've made a film, and people think if you're not an actor anymore, you're a director because you've done this. And it was the proof that I did it that meant that the second film to be made, which was a film called Here We Are, was actually much, I say easier. It was easier to get made than Lola, just because of having done the first one. So the second short film was made the following year later, which was September 2019. And before, sorry, I've sort of jumped around a bit, but before all this, I made a sort of pact to myself that I would make a short film a year. Every year I would make a short film and get it made through determination and self-belief. And and that's actually come to pass. So Lola was made in 2018. I made my second short film called Here We Are in 2019. I'm making my third short film this year. And the plan and the idea behind that was setting goals for myself, setting tasks and targets, and not that they were unrealistic, but making sure that I had a big, making sure that I set myself goals. But to sort of summarize my big sort of just talking at you for this long, is that I've always willed something into existence. The biggest thing that people have always said about me, which is whether rightly or wrongly, is that I get things made. If I've got a plan, I'll end up doing it, whether that's acting, writing, directing. If I want the thing to do, if I want it to be made, I'll end up doing it. And the biggest thing that I can sort of pass on to you guys is that in this creative world, in this industry, you'll have more rejections and more no's and more people saying, no, you can't, than you'll have in any other industry. And the biggest thing that hopefully that you'll take from this is that if you have an idea, whether it's shot on an iPhone, or if you want to be an actor and you want to get an audition and you will do your best at that audition, you can will something into existence and be determined, and don't take no for an answer. Because that's how I basically live my life. I've tried to be determined and forthright in getting what I want. And it's sort of worked out for me, sort of hasn't in certain places. But it's the biggest thing that I can tell to any creative is that you're going to have a lot of people saying no to you. You're going to have your ideas saying that that's bad. You're going to have your people criticizing your acting. You're not going to get certain jobs. You're going to apply for things, and things where people say, no, there was someone better than you. The test of a character is how do you react after this?